What if we found ourselves under the thumb of savage tyrants? What if all of our institutions of power became hopelessly corrupt and weaponized against us? Would we be able to win? What's happening, folks? This video is sponsored by USCCA. I've been a card-carrying member of USCCA for a couple years. I liked it and I wanted some type of protection, and so I have it. We're living in the days of non-accountability, and so you could get in a justifiable shoot and spend massive amounts of money just trying to prove your innocence, and that's why I want USCCA to have my back. I paid for the service. They didn't give it to me. I paid for it. It didn't cost a lot, but it's good peace of mind. I have liability insurance in all kinds of other areas of my life, and as a guy who carries a gun every day of his life, I thought this is a good idea for me. It may be a good idea for you. If it's not a good idea, you can cancel it any time because it's risk-free. As an added benefit to their liability insurance, they have all kinds of educational tools that are free for you. Check USCCA out today. Link down below. It does not come with this sword, though it should. We could ask if a membership came with an elven sword, I would get it for sure. USCCA cuts through the proverbial crap. Too cheesy. They'll never go for that. What's happening, my friend? John Lovell here, Warrior Poet Society, and I've got a fresh word. Sometimes I make videos because I should, and that's a good idea, and maybe that would make for a good video. This one's different in that I went to sleep thinking about it. I woke up this morning and it was kind of stewing, and I'm like, no, I got to get this out. Let me set the stage by way of telling you what I'm reading to my sons, and this is absolutely relevant. You'll probably like it. We're reading a book right now called The Green Ember. And it's about this community of rabbits. They have lost the great wood to terrible wolves and birds of the air, birds of prey. And so they're in hiding right now. And then there's our little young protagonist, coming of age rabbit by the name of Pickett. And Pickett has been taken from his homeland. He lost his parents and his little brother Jax. And he's being trained now as the Padawan learner of a great warrior rabbit by the name of Helmer. Helmer is savage. He is all business. And he's teaching young Pickett how to wield a sword against their enemies. But he identifies in young Pickett three major weaknesses. The first, Pickett is scared of heights, and there is no room for that kind of fear in a warrior. Second, he is afraid of the birds of the air. He's just paralyzed by these birds. Can't do that. That's one of your main enemies. Can't let that fear encroach. And the third one struck me. I kind of was reading to my sons and I stopped there on that. And it was the third one. Helmer said, yeah, and the third weakness you have is you think that we can win. And I didn't like that. I'm reading to my boys here and I'm kind of like, well, what about the hope? You know, you got a revolution, man. Revolutions are built on hope. You gotta believe. You don't just fight, you gotta believe in this thing. But here's a seasoned warrior soberly addressing what he was up against, and he just deems that it was an impossible war. Now, he wasn't not going to fight. He was still gonna fight, which is a good thing, but he just didn't see any real way that they could win, and that failure to correctly read a battlefield and understand the opposition he saw as a weakness. Now, I wanted to use that to jump into more modern day stuff. What if we found ourselves under the thumb of savage tyrants? Just by way of thought experiment, what if all of our institutions of power became hopelessly corrupt and weaponized against us? Would we be able to win? Now, some would say, we've won before. In 1776, we declared our Declaration of Independence, and then we warred against one of the mightiest empires in the world, Great Britain. And really, we just didn't have much of a chance at all. In the leading up to our break with Great Britain, colonists were constantly harassed. They had suffered all kinds of ills. It wasn't just about taxation, though that was absolutely true. It was about an oppressive government that continually bullied and pushed more and more on the colonists. Their basic human rights had been trampled on to such an extent it was extremely hard just to make a living. And now, as a reminder, the colonists, they didn't just grow out of the ground there. They were Irishmen. They were Scots. They had been ruled under the thumb of Great Britain across the Atlantic for generations, many losing their homes, family members facing starvation, making it so that it was just impossible to make a living. They retreated across the Atlantic to be able to find a place where they could have the freedom to be able to maybe just eke out and carve out a way that they could exist, to be able to provide for their family. They weren't looking for this massive amounts of riches per se, all of them. They just wanted to be able to be left alone from tyrannical rule long enough so that maybe, just maybe, they could have a basic living. Now, this ubiquitous sentiment in the colonies had led the folks even as early as 1774, 1775, before the Declaration of Independence, grassroots movement. They were not really listening to Parliament or the Crown anymore. I know this from reading, goodbye pen, American Dissidents. This is by T.H. Breen. I was reading it and I just got fire in my veins last night as I was realizing that the revolution, more than I ever really thought or supposed, it wasn't just a few great men, politicians leading the way. It was a ground-swelling grassroots movement of pissed off Americans that were tired of being pushed around over and over and over again. And eventually they rebelled and they demanded of their leaders to represent that. And so these politicians that carved out our initial Constitution were listening to the people, and they were kind of the people more rather than some appointed aristocratic class removed from the people's interests like they had in Great Britain. So everyone was ticked off. It got to a tipping point, and independence was declared, and a breaking under the yoke of tyranny happened. But I found myself thinking, as I'm reading this and just imagining this and going back to that day and age of like, what if the colonists, and this is where the video really gets good, this is where you lean in a little bit, this is where if you're fidgeting and doing something else, stop doing that, listen to me now. What if the colonists were gloriously entertained all the time? Imagine that the colonists had these little screens they were addicted to. What if they were so distracted by entertainment, would revolution have happened? Furthermore, what if moral relativism had really swept through the land? That means they don't have a clear definition of right and wrong. Without a real right and wrong standard, reformation or revolution can't really brew as a popular sentiment. We don't have a standard which everyone can rise unanimously and say, that's wrong. Now further, what if the colonists were hopelessly dependent on the state? You don't have a job, no problem. We'll pay you to stay home. So in case there's some big pandemic, here's a bunch of money. You don't have to do much. The colonists were hopelessly dependent on the states in which they were rebelling against. Even if you rebel against that tyrannical system, you can't survive apart from the system which you are plugged into. Oh, that's harsh. Now, we're not going to stop at these three. Let's further imagine that the colonists were under the most perfect system of surveillance ever conceived by man. That means they have a listening device and video screen every moment of the day and everywhere they go. This not only allows the state to perfectly keep tabs on you, recording everything you ever do and look at, but it also inhibits you from ever being able to communicate or organize with other dissidents. Imagine that the colonists were up against that fourth ill, pure surveillance and propagandized state. I won't belabor this too much farther. I'll just say a fifth one. Let's also imagine that all the institutions of power were massively more powerful than what the colonists faced. The government itself wasn't working with the people to declare independence, was actively working against them. All institutions of power against you. Now here, if Helmer, the great swordsman rabbit from the Green Ember, could pop out of the book and sit on this table, I think he would say, yeah, you can't win. And to think that you could win would be a weakness. And maybe he'd be completely wrong. I'm kind of like, no, we will prevail because we must. I want to believe that. Maybe so. But I mean, if you look through, the history of the world, good isn't always beating evil. In fact, As we get further progressed throughout history, the 20th century, which should have been a time on the back of the Industrial Revolution and all these inventions and discovery, and we're getting better and better, the 20th century ended up being bloodier than all human history and centuries before it. Just because our technology is improving doesn't mean our humanity is. This is why I am extremely thrilled that my hope is not anchored in beating the kings of this world. I follow the King Jesus. And some of you are be like, oh, I hate this. Was this just all some sermon? I'm like, no, this isn't just me being real. My hope really is in there. So if everything just fell, my hope is really put in a different place. And so I am in that happy perspective in that I will live joyfully in this world while I'm here, loving my friends and family and trying to do some good, and that's what the Warrior Poet Society is all about. But ultimately, I do glory in the fact that King Jesus is building a different type of forever kingdom, and I'm a part of that one. So even if this one goes, I think I can go down with joy, albeit fighting for justice and out of love for those who suffer beside me. I think that's the way that you hold on to hope. It's not hope that will actually pull off making the broken world no longer broken. The broken world always will be broken. That doesn't mean I won't fight to restore and make it fix, but ultimately, this fallen rock, Earth, isn't my forever home. I do know that it is our job to resist evil and unlivable tyrannical circumstances. And so you got to fight no matter what. But the question is can we win? And I don't know. The video looked like it was about to end. I was kind of winding things down. This is part 2 of the same video, and it's because I wanted to look at some pieces out there that I find very hopeful. As the battlefield is set now, it looks pretty grim. It is very bad. However, I do see some shifting tides that is really exciting, and it means you and I need to do our part to make sure our institutions of power that we're developing alongside those that have been hijacked, and to do whatever we can to recoup lost ground in those institutions of power, is extremely crazy critical for you and I. And so here's some good stuff that I see going on. Institutions like the media, CNN, MSNBC, needs to be turned off and never back on again. Their ratings have been crashing because it's just manipulative lies. You need to check out of that. It's awful. However, other institutions of power, which are far, far better, and you may not like the ones I'm about to mention. However, I really like them, and I get my opinion. And I'll say at least this. We can agree on this. These are way better than what we've got now. Like the Daily Wire. I listen to the Daily Wire all the time. Lots of different perspectives, but of a very sane and logical viewpoint and worldview, which more similarly matches mine. Yay, Daily Wire. Newsmax has some stuff. Tucker Carlson over at Fox, and Fox looks like it's really fallen. However, there's some still personalities that exist in there, and I like Tucker Carlson. My friend Sebastian Gorka, he's putting out incredible news and really appreciate him. Also, personalities across social media and YouTube. There's some people giving out really good information. Those big tech platforms are not going to serve them up to you. You got to hunt and find them, but once you find them, you can get some really good information, and I appreciate that that's happening. In the sector of education, which is another hijacked institution, 2 million less kids this year are out of the public school system. 2 million kids have left and are now being homeschooled. The homeschool movement is massive. It is incredible. And all the resources with all these co-ops and curriculums on demand, it's truly, truly remarkable. We're getting our kids back that are no longer being created as little woke Marxists, and instead we're taking them back, and that's great. On the higher level of upper academia, we have institutions like Hillsdale College, an anti-woke university, and that's really exciting too. I see a lot of information coming through Prager University and also some new stuff there, and I really appreciate the very sane perspectives that I get there. I learn a lot. I really appreciate that, but it's showing that these institutions of power, we're making our own. And that's really, really helpful. In the political area, I just generally despise politicians. I find them disingenuous, filling your ears with all kinds of empty promises and little platitudes, while instead they accept the big briefcase of money and do whatever they want to do for more power and more money. I generally despise them. However, there is a wave, I think, that's really happening where we're getting these rhinos, Republican in name only, out of the mix. And instead, we're getting some young, passionate truth tellers, folks that'll put it all on the line and just call evil, evil, and good, good. And I really appreciate that as well. In the entertainment sector, I'm seeing country music stars write anti-woke music. I really like that. And they'll just immediately top the charts. If you come out with something that's just old values, red, white, and blue, it's just gonna immediately peg the chart. No matter how sappy, no matter how silly, people are just so ready to root against wokeness. I noticed that Top Gun 2 was a non-woke movie. Everything seems to be woke, but that was a non-woke movie. And it crushed, predictably. It crushed. You also see some entertaining streaming services pop up as these huge Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu's are going more and more wildly woke. They are bleeding, hemorrhaging followers faster and faster as we've just had enough of it, and folks are instead opting for people with good values that are just like what you want to watch without being just polluted with all this propagandized silliness. We have our Watch WPSN, watchwpsn.com. We have an app with all kinds of different shows. Please watch our War Poet show. It's really good. There's also other entertainment streaming platforms. Nothing to rival the big guys yet, but they're gaining momentum, gaining infrastructure. It takes a while to build that infrastructure and it takes certain resources, but the fact of the matter is this: we're regaining ground in the entertainment fight. That's where all real philosophy these days is promulgated. And so don't give entertainment this ancillary, not really crucial, important piece of power in the institutions game. It is ever so important because just as you're being entertained, you're also being highly influenced on a subconscious level. You have to be able to regain ground in the entertainment sector. Anyway, guys, this should be something to give you a little bit of courage, just a little bit of hope in a very bleak, downcast world. You need to get behind these institutions of power, pump them up, try to not throw dollars toward woke corporations as best that you can, and be able to empower our side of sane, reason, goodness. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with today, guys. Love you, appreciate you. Warrior poets, we live for higher purpose. We're ready to sacrifice in the defense of other your forces for good in the world. And no matter how hopeless it looks, I'd rather be on your side. So you guys are awesome. Train hard, train smart, and stay free.